Hello and welcome back to Route 1 Football, the football preview show brought to you by Star Sports. This is episode 2. We're going to be talking about the teams that are tipped for success this season. And joining me at the luxurious Curzon Street Mayfair Star Sports shop, I have with me Alex Crook and Robbie Savage. They're going to give us the lowdown on what they think is going to be happening this season and the teams who are going to be reaching for the stars. So let's start with title contenders. I mean, seems a pretty obvious question, guys. But are there going to be any other teams that are going to come anywhere near close to Manchester City?
I think it will be closer. I think a lot of teams are getting stronger. I think Arsenal have had a really good summer. They've got their top targets. I think Manchester United, by the end of the window, will end up with their priority targets. I think Liverpool will pick up where they left off at the end of the last season and go again. I think that will be the top 4. I won't give you a definite order at the moment. I think City, to me, look a little bit too short. It's very difficult, history tells us, to win even back-to-back league titles. No team have ever won it 4 times in a row. Let's hope that continues.
Why do you think they can't do that, or won't do that, should I say?
I think you'll inevitably have a bit of a come down when you've achieved what they did last season. Treble winners, only the second team in English football history to do so. I think there's going to be more big name departures, maybe a younger profile of the squad. And what keeps them motivated when you've done it all?
Robbie, who are your picks to get into the top 4? And can anybody usurp Manchester City?
I think it's going to be very difficult. They were magnificent last year, you know, the way Pep plays his football. Let's be fair, it wasn't their best season. You know, they were beatable last year at times. And Arsenal, let's be fair, was it in April the 1st, went 8 points clear at the top?
Should have won it.
Should have won it, but I think Chelsea to get in the top 4. I think you look at Newcastle, Champions League football. Arsenal, yes, they made 3 good signings as we speak. They've improved. But I think Chelsea, I think with the manager in Pochettino, the way he can improve players, no European football's huge. I think Chelsea top 4.
So if you're saying Chelsea top 4,
yeah.
City definitely in the top 4.
Yeah.
That's 2.
Yeah.
Who's the other 2? Who misses out?
It's between Arsenal and Liverpool. I think Arsenal, I think they've improved. The big one's Liverpool. I think if they continue to play at that high line, you know, they were beatable last year and they didn't have a great season. So I think right now, if you're looking at it, I would say Man City, Arsenal, Manchester United, Chelsea.
Who do you think will push Manchester City all the way, Alex?
I think Arsenal will be there again. I'm not sure on the Kai Havertz signing, but apart from that, I like what they've done this summer. I think their young team will learn from the near miss last season. I think Bukayo Saka is going to have an even better season, which is great news for England heading into the Euros. So I think they'll be there. I think Manchester United can be closer as well. And I think Liverpool will bounce back and get that Champions League place.
Well, let's look at the race for Europe. It'll be a very interesting. I think it'll probably be the strongest Premier League and the most exciting that we've had for many years because of all those names that you mentioned there. So many teams are strengthening. Newcastle are in there now. Aston Villa with Unai Emery. Who knows what they'll be able to achieve. But they do have European football to play. So that could go against them with all the fixtures. Who do you think will qualify for the Europa League now?
Oh, Liverpool.
Bold prediction, that.
Well, because I don't think they'll finish in the top 4, but I think they'll finish inside the top 6. So I would say Liverpool. Is it an outsider? Listen, Spurs is the one. Hans Postecoglou done great with Celtic. Fantastic manager. Depends if they keep Harry Kane. Aston Villa, they've got European football, as Alex has alluded to on a previous episode, that will Unai Emery, really focus on that Conference League. I think that 6th place is a difficult one to judge because it's so competitive. Right now, I would probably say Newcastle and Liverpool.
Right. Nobody's mentioned Brighton.
I think it'd be difficult for them to achieve what they did last year. They've already lost McAllister. Obviously, a big fight to keep hold of Caicedo. They're going to have to balance European football for the first time ever with what they want to do in the Premier League. And I think Roberto De Zerbi, being a foreign coach, I think he might actually target the Europa League and maybe try and have a deep run in that competition. So I think it'll be hard for Brighton to go again. Listen, they're not going to struggle against relegation, but it wouldn't surprise me if they finished 10th, which obviously would be a drop-off. I think Brentford surprised to see them on the list when you think that Ivan Toney won't play until January. It's going to be a huge loss for them. I think Villa are the value there to get into the top 6. But Robbie's right. It's so difficult, isn't it? Because we talked about the top 4. I think we think Liverpool, if they don't finish in the top 4, will probably finish 5th. Then you've got Tottenham, you've got Chelsea, you've got Newcastle, you've got Aston Villa.
So many teams.
That's got to be the top 9, you would have thought.
So it baffles me, Bianca, when people say about Thursday and a Sunday. There's no difference between a Wednesday and Saturday. I done it for Blackburn Rovers and Leicester. We had the Europa League, and on a Thursday, football players love playing games, and we know now how teams travel. It's luxurious. Most teams now stay over and will train on the Friday morning on their base, a relaxing journey on the way home. So on a Thursday and a Sunday is really no different to me. And in fact, at Blackburn and Leicester, we thrived on it, and we had fantastic seasons this season. We were in Europe, so. When I hear people saying about, well, it's Thursday, Sunday, I'm not too sure. For me personally, it didn't make any difference. In fact, I thrived on it.
What about the crowd, though? Because I do find, I don't know if you feel this as a broadcaster, those Sunday games, particularly earlier in the day, 2 o'clock kickoff on a Sunday afternoon, if you've played in Europe on a Thursday, I just don't feel the atmosphere in the stadium is quite what it would be if it was 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon.
Sometimes you've got to drive the atmosphere as a player, though. You've got to set the tempo. And I remember getting games. If it was 0-0, nothing was happening, I would just go and,
kick someone.
50-50 challenge, get the crowd going. And sometimes it's down to players to get, themselves and the crowd going. And we've seen some great games on a Sunday as well, by the way. The early games, of course, eating your pre-match like at 11 o'clock in the morning, 3 hours before, sometimes could be difficult, but listen, what a life footballers have.
Well, exactly. I mean, a lot of those teams that are competing don't play at 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon anyway, do they? With the early games, with the Friday night football, Monday night football as well. When you're looking at the teams who are playing in the European competitions this season, which teams do you think will be affected most by that with the fixture congestions?
I think Newcastle, potentially, because I think emotionally, those Champions League nights under lights at St James's Park are going to take a lot out of the players. They're not spending the type of cash that maybe people thought they would, so the squad isn't so deep. Maybe Brighton, because as I mentioned, I think De Zerbi's going to target the Europa League. The teams in the Champions League, the usual suspects should be okay. But again, even Manchester United, you've alluded to it, the squad isn't as deep as perhaps it could be.
One team we haven't mentioned is West Ham. They're in there for a top 6 finish and a top half finish. But again, as they showed last season, although they had huge success in the European competition, it really affected their league form. Do you think they're going to manage to scrape into the top half, let alone the top 6?
I'm not convinced. I mean, we've already spoken on a previous episode about David Moyes and his future. You look at the top end of the pitch particularly, didn't really work out for Scamacca. He's been talking all summer about the fact he wants to go back to Italy, so that's not an ideal scenario. Michael Antonio is not getting any younger and there's interest in him as well. Danny Ings, is he going to stay fit? Didn't exactly fire last season. So you do wonder where the goals are coming from. I think Jarrod Bowen is a terrific player. Paquetá got better as the season progressed. But yeah, I wouldn't have West Ham down, certainly not for top 6, and I'm not sure top half.
I think they need to, use that 105 million from Declan Rice wisely. They've been linked with Scott McTominay, Conor Gallagher. They would be 2 fantastic acquisitions for West Ham, but it's at the forward end of the pitch. We've seen Bowen score that winner from a centre forward position, those runs from outside to win. They need, for me, number 9. Antonio's done great, hasn't he? The way he leads the line, crosses into the box for Antonio. Scamacca didn't really work out, so they need number 9.
They've struggled with number 9, so
yeah.
Sebastian Haller didn't have a great time at West Ham either. If you were a West Ham fan, I won't tell you how I feel about it, but if you were a West Ham fan, would you be worried at this stage?
I'd be thinking Tony Cottee and Frank McAvoy.
Paolo Di Canio, is he still around?
John Hartson and Paul Kitson, yeah?
I wouldn't be worried in terms of relegation. I don't think they're a team who are going to be looking over their shoulder, but what's the next step for West Ham? Again, what we're speaking about, the come down for Man City, they've won their European trophy, first piece of silverware in decades. The only way is down, probably.
I think West Ham fans will be happy if they don't have a relegation battle this season, if I'm honest. So we're all in agreement. We don't think they're going to make the top half of the table. So let's look at bottom half teams and which ones that we think might be able to sneak in. Now, for me, I'm going to go for Burnley. They had such a fantastic season last season, obviously winning the championship by 101 points. They were the top scorers. They had the best defence in the championship. Sometimes those teams that come up, they continue that momentum. I think Leeds have done it in recent years. Wolves, Sheffield United, they managed to then go into a Premier League season and make the top 10. So for me, with Vincent Kompany, I think he's a very special manager. I think he's going to be able to get Burnley into that top half. What do you two guys think? Who are you going to go for?
I'm going to go for Everton to finish 10th. You know, I'm shaking your head there, Bianca. Not that I told Bianca to agree with that.
They stayed up by the skin of their teeth last season.
But let's not underestimate Sean Dyche. Sean Dyche got Burnley to 7th in the Premier League. You know, with the lowest budget in the Premier League, or one of the lowest budgets. And he kept them in season after season after season. Everton are a bigger football club. You know, the fan base there at Goodison, if he can get that crowd behind them, you know, and listen, we're still early in the transfer window, so I think they would have recruited, you know, by the time the season starts, or at the end of the transfer window. They need a number 9 who can score goals. I think that Sean Dyche and his coaching staff, we can't underestimate how he can transform a football club. Burnley qualify for Europe. And let's be fair, Everton have got all the, you know, the acumens to, you know, be a top 6 side, a top 7 side. So I think Sean Dyche this season can get Everton into that top half. I think 10th would be, for me, a realistic aim for Everton.
I agree with that. I just think there'd be...
Well, you didn't, you shook your head.
I agree with what you're saying, but I still don't think they'll get into the top half of the table.
I think you've both gone really bold. To be fair, Burnley and Everton were not two teams even on my radar for a top 10 finish.
Who did you go for?
I've gone for Forest, which I guess in some ways is
Hold
a
on a
big
minute.
shout as well. When you look at
That's
their
not any
season
different
last
whatsoever.
season.
You can see that with pace. They got pace.
Yeah, and they've got goals as well. They've got goals from midfield. Obviously, Awonyi finished the season really well. If he can translate that into this season, then that's going to be a big bonus. Massive fan of Morgan Gibbs-White, who will be high in confidence after what he did at the Under-21 European Championship. I like Brennan Johnson if they can keep hold of him, because there is interest. And what I think is interesting for Forest, they signed so many players in the last 2 transfer windows. They almost don't need to do a lot in this window because they've just got the summer to mould the signings they've already made. Steve Cooper's got the love of the Forest fans. I think they're going to have a much better season. I'm going to go for them for 10th.
Okay, quick recap then, guys. Looking at the top 10, I want to know who you think the title winner is going to be, your top 4, top 6, and then who is going to be finishing in the bottom places.
I'm going to go for City to win the title. Top 4 being Arsenal, Manchester United and Chelsea. Those next 3 not in any particular order.
So Chelsea could finish second then?
I think
they could be
4th.
title contenders.
I think they'll finish 4th. And then followed by Newcastle and Liverpool. Spurs in 7th. That's what I think for my top 7.
Alex?
I'm going to be different. I'm going to say Arsenal to win the title.
Oh.
Arsenal to kick
How?
on from last season.
How?
For the reasons I've explained about City, I think they're going to have a bit of a drop-off. Key players moving on. Arsenal stronger for what they went through last year. I'm going to go Arsenal for the title. City, United, Liverpool, Tottenham if they keep Harry Kane, Villa,
Better Newcastle and
Chelsea,
Better Newcastle.
Wow.
Newcastle,
Wow.
8th.
Wow.
I think we're going to get a lot of comments after that, I have to say.
And I'm writing a book about Newcastle, so I don't hate you Newcastle
What's
fans.
the book called?
I don't think anyone's going to
Match of
read
my
it
life.
after that.
Right. Where can you buy it?
Nowhere now.
They'll be burning it after this.
7th, I've got Spurs. 8th, I'll go Aston Villa. 9th, Brighton. And 10th, Everton.
Alex?
And I think I did a top
13,
8.
13 Bournemouth.
Who have we got left?
So I'm going to go Brighton 9th and Forest 10th.
Right, guys, I want you to be brave now. I'm going to push you for one bold prediction. What would it be? It could either be who's going to finish in the top 4, who's going to win a trophy, who's going to finish in the top 10, who's going to be relegated maybe.
I've gone brave already with Arsenal, to be fair, but that isn't my bold prediction. I'm going to go Aston Villa to win the Conference League.
Robbie, can I ask you to be brave?
I'll say Newcastle to win the Europa League. So obviously
Okay,
they start in the Champions League. I think they could finish, depending on their group, but
It's a convoluted way.
Yeah, it is. But Newcastle to win the Europa League.
I think Burnley finishing top 10's kind
That's a
of
big one.
That's
a big
that's
brave
one.
as well.
bold.
That was my...
That's the boldest of them all,
yeah.
I think.
Okay, so summing up the bold predictions, Alex thinks Aston Villa will win a domestic trophy. Robbie thinks Newcastle will win the Europa League.
Albeit that they'll finish third in the Champions League group and then go into the Europa League.
And I think Burnley will finish in the top 10. If you agree with any of those, or if you think we're totally mad, let us know in the comments, and we'll see you on the next episode of Route 1 Football.